Well, hey there, Mama, and welcome back to the Moms Overcoming Overwhelm podcast, episode 114. I'm Emily McDermott, and I'm here beside you on this journey as we work together to declutter your home, head, and heart. Well, if you consider yourself to be a very caring, selfless, nurturing, giving mom, which maybe is one reason why we're so overwhelmed, and have a hard time putting your own needs first or even articulating what those might be, today's episode is for you. I am so thrilled to have Teresa Wiedrick on the podcast today. Teresa helps the dissatisfied, overwhelmed homeschool mom shed what's not working so she can show up in her homeschool and life authentically, purposefully, and confidently. And Teresa is a graduated homeschool mom of 4 and certified life coach who walks alongside moms to reflect their concerns and challenges so they can get clear on those challenges, enable clarifying, perspective shifting conversations, and encourage accountability with practical tools. And we are going to be talking all things boundaries and self-care today. And Teresa has several great resources for you, so make sure to check out the show notes. She also has a podcast called Homeschool Mama Self-Care, Nurturing the Nurturer. So I can't wait to dive into this conversation with Teresa. I know you're going to learn so much, so what do you say? Grab that notebook and pen, and let's dive into today's episode with Teresa Wiedrick. Hey there, Mama. Are you tired of all the stuff crowding your home, calendar, and mind? Do you wish you could say goodbye to the endless to-do list running around in your head? Want to declutter but don't know where to start? You're in the right place. Welcome to Moms Overcoming Overwhelm, where you will find proven and practical solutions to declutter your home, head, and heart. Hi, I'm Emily, a wife, boy mom, and simplicity seeker. I struggled to get pregnant and felt overwhelmed until I discovered decluttering could create the physical and emotional space I needed to become a mom. Now, 2 kids later, I've transformed my life and motherhood by developing simple systems around decluttering, capsule wardrobes, kid stuff, cleaning and tidying, meal planning, time management, and more, and I can't wait to share them with you. If you're ready to reclaim the time and energy you crave, be present with your kids, and finally enjoy the life and motherhood you so deserve, let's kick overwhelm to the curb, shall we? Grab your lukewarm coffee, your notebook and pen, and clear off some counter space. Let's do this. Well, hi, Teresa. Thank you so much for coming on the Moms Overcoming Overwhelm podcast. I am very happy to talk with you today.
Me too. I'm so glad we get to chat.
Yes, we are both in the podcast space, figuring out how to support these overwhelmed moms. And you specifically with all sorts of holistic self-care support, nurturing the nurturer, which I absolutely love that idea. And I would love it if you could tell us a little bit about you and your family and the women you serve. And if you have any copious amounts of free time, what you like to do in your free time.
You know what, Emily? I have more free time than I ever have had because
Yeah.
I only have one kiddo at home now.
Yay.
And he's 15. I know it's a good thing, but I will take my little kids back because those moments were so sweet. But I still have 4 kids, but 3 of them are grown up, launched across the country doing post-secondary training of various sorts. And I'm on the west coast of British Columbia on a homestead in Canada. And when I'm not doing homestead related things, I'm writing, I'm coaching, I'm podcasting, and I hang out in my closet a lot. Studio C.
I've heard it called a cloffice before, and I really like that, the closet office. Very popular with the podcast crew for sure.
It is true. It's great sound. That or the minivan.
Yeah, and you have been homeschooling over the course of your kids' life, so it's been for over 20 years, is that right?
It's not 20 years of homeschooling,
Oh, right.
but I have
That'd be
a
a lot.
22-year-old. I mean, it all depends when you would say someone actually begins homeschooling. But my oldest was the end of grade 2 when I officially pulled her out of school. I started thinking about homeschooling in kindergarten for her kindergarten.
Oh, wow. And my youngest just started kindergarten. So I'm kind of in this
Really?
phase, of like they're both in school and figuring out the whole entrepreneurship podcasting thing. So it's kind of a fun season. And I was curious, I always ask my guests about a time when they felt overwhelmed in their motherhood. And of course, for you, it could be yesterday with the teenager, or maybe it was when they were the littles. But when you realized that something needed to change, maybe it was your routines, maybe it was making that decision to homeschool, could be any number of things. But when you felt super overwhelmed and you had to raise that white flag and say, okay, I'm done, and kind of what was the catalyst and what did you do to change?
So interestingly, this is an origin story for my business, coaching homeschool moms. And it's the reason I wrote my book, Homeschool Mama Self-Care Nurturing the Nurturer.
Mhm.
It really originated in a moment of overwhelm in about my third year of homeschooling, about a January or February, which many in the homeschool community know as the slump month. Everything's kind of gray outside. Everybody's bored of the routine. There's no holidays to look forward to, but there's still more stuff to do in the curriculum or in the way that we've constructed our homeschools. And for us, as a family of six, we did a lot of traveling for 7 years. And so we initially moved to an area that we didn't know anybody. We weren't, weren't related to anybody. And then we started traveling for 7 years off and on, about half time. We're in a small town I've never been to before, and it was slump month. There was a lot of conflict with the kids that morning. I remember trying to pull out the math workbooks and feeling like, what is the problem? People don't want to do this. And I can't remember the setup, but you can imagine if you've got more than one kiddo, there's just a lot of energy, a lot of conflict, a lot of complaining. And I so lovingly created these lesson plans or these different things for my kids, and they didn't want to do it. And it was just a confluence of things. I felt overwhelmed.
Yeah. And so when you were in that state of like, oh my gosh, they don't want to do the math workbooks and they're bugging each other again. So what were you able to do to either shift your mindset or make, I guess, a sort of tactical change as far as like your approach? Because it sounds like you're in an unfamiliar place. And like you said, I know what you mean by the slump months. Don't have
Yeah,
anything to look forward to really. Easter
right.
seems pretty far away. So what were you able to do as far as like shift your mindset around your overwhelm at that point?
So it didn't happen in that moment, really. I remember reaching out to my husband, who's an emergency physician, and he wasn't available to me on text. He usually is, but he wasn't then. And so then I reached out to my friend, and she'd said to me, I just watched this Brené Brown TEDx talk. You should like watch this. And I'm like, in that feeling of just so many emotions, kind of like a deer in the headlights, angry, sad that I feel angry, not quite sure how I should approach everybody, but definitely don't go hang out with the kids right now. Just go, decompress. And so then I watched this Brené Brown TEDx talk that I still to this day don't know exactly what I took at what moment, but it spoke about authenticity, vulnerability, all of her good stuff, and shame. And I noticed in a moment that I don't know who I am or what I need. I don't know anything about addressing my own needs. And I think that's part of the big issue here is that I'm not really being honest about who I am and what I need, despite trying to pour myself out and do all the things for everybody else around me.
Yeah, and I feel like that is so common for women and for moms, and that feeling of overwhelm where it's just kind of like the physical manifestation of it in your body. And then also you have like the thought spiral going on as far as like, well, a good mom would do this and I'm not doing that. And what does that mean about me? And
Yep.
I've definitely been there. I'm sure you have
Yeah.
too. And now through various ways of simplifying the environment and being able to, what we're going to talk about today is being able to have those healthy boundaries so that you're able to take care of yourself in the way that you need to without
Yeah.
listening to the voices that are like, but what about this? And you need to do this. And what about that? So I would love it if you could maybe tell us your opinion just from working with overwhelmed moms in the homeschool space, why you think it's so difficult for us as women and as moms, especially to have healthy boundaries when it comes to our expectations of ourselves and also others' expectations of us or what we perceive those to be. How is that impacting our ability to have those boundaries around self-care rather than just pouring out, pouring out, pouring out because we feel like that's what's expected of us?
Right. So I think there's actually many answers in this based on who the person is that I'm engaging. generally, I think at core, if we don't know how to address our needs, if we don't know how we want to show up in our relationships intentionally, instilling those boundaries, and we don't really know ourselves, then we are naturally going to do the thing that I think is not just a cultural push. I think it's like a maternal instinct to want, and it's not everybody's, but it is a lot of mothers that they want to just provide for their kids, do the right thing, which really is the thing I think we really do need to do. We need to nurture our kids. That's why they're there. We need to lead them and guide them and do all the things for them. And also recognize that we're not godlike figures, although to them we probably are, but we aren't actually gods. We are human beings that have real needs. So when we finally figure out, or if we do come to the conclusion that we are not human beings, then fine, you can pour yourself out and not address your needs. But until then, you're a human being. You have needs. You have to address the stuff that is you, if you're going to want to continue to do this very significant work of motherhood.
Yes, very significant work. And I read in a book somewhere, it's the only job you can't quit,
Yeah.
which is parenting and motherhood. And,
Yeah. It calls you
so
to grow.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you kind of have those white flag moments like the, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
And, and I think for me, part of my story has to do with infertility. And the reason that has impacted my perception of expectations. Well, I prayed for these kids and I
Yeah.
wanted these kids so badly and I finally have them. And so why is it that I feel so depleted,
Yes.
And so we have these thoughts. And I guess if someone recognizes in themselves, they actually have that awareness of, oh, wow, I'm overwhelmed because I'm not taking care of myself in the way that I feel like I need to in order to nurture these children that have been entrusted to me. What
Yeah.
are some ways, I guess, some practical steps once you have that awareness to be able to slowly build maybe some of those self-care boundaries if you haven't had any before? What would you recommend to when you're coaching women, I guess?
Yeah. So many possible avenues. So if I approach this the way I would in coaching, I would actually go into the details with you. Tell me what it is that you think your gut instinct is that you're not addressing or you're not approaching or being honest about with yourself. And, so does that mean, deep in your soul, you're not addressing the basic needs that you have? Or maybe it means you don't even know what those are. You're not accustomed to listening to them even before you were a mom. Or who are you really? Are you able to, if I ask you the question, where are we going to go for lunch? And you're like, I don't know, where do you want to go? And you don't have any thoughts about what your opinions are, or you feel worried that I'm going to say something that you're not going to approve of, or maybe you're someone that's in a relationship that isn't deeply satisfying, or you're in an atmosphere of relationships or in a group of people that make you feel not seen or not heard. Those would be the directions that I would go in discussion and try to clarify, like, what is the root of why you're not addressing your needs, because that would really be the most important place to start. I actually have a building boundaries journaling workbook for that purpose, to go into all the questions, all the things that I often have discussions around, in order to help you clarify what really matters.
Yeah. And I'll make sure to link to that, by the way, in the show notes. We'll do that. And I
Yeah.
think that I'm wondering if you have this from the moms that you have in your community where they say, I am so overwhelmed and everything's swirling around me. It's so chaotic. I don't even know how to find the space and the time to reflect and to
Mm-hmm.
journal. And I hear about like, oh, journaling, and oh, that sounds so great as I sit in
Yeah.
my little nook and the sun streams through the window and I have my hot coffee and it's actually still hot. And so I feel like these reflective exercises and the journaling is so key to actually understanding our needs and what the root is, like you said. But I
Yeah.
feel like a lot I get from women is that no time, no time, no time, no time. So
Yeah.
how do you recommend that people either make the time, or how do you make sure that people are doing that work instead of just saying, Teresa, just tell me what to do. Like, I don't want to do the hard work. Just tell me what to do. How do you help them actually find that space?
Well, first of all, I was there, so I get that. Even though I loved journaling since I was 7, and even when I was 7, I had nothing to say though. I made my bed, I brushed my teeth, I whatever, I did basic things, and that's what I would write in my journal. I had a journaling practice since I was 7, and I still found it difficult when I was in that overwhelmed space. Having said that, it was my cheap form of therapy is every Wednesday night in the first 3 or so months of homeschooling my 4 kids, I would go to Starbucks. I have no affiliate with Starbucks. In fact, I don't even care for Starbucks anymore, but I talk about them a lot. But I went to Starbucks every Wednesday night, ordered a pumpkin spice latte and a pumpkin spice scone, grabbed my journal and just wrote. It was just like verbal diarrhea, just boom, it's on the page. And it really did help keep me sane or keep my head above water. So I identify with that experience of, are you kidding me? I'm supposed to go with my journal somewhere quiet. I can't. I'm sleeping with my baby and I roll out of bed and my toddler's right there. I get it. Also, what I'd really say is that if people are resistant to the concept of it, not, I don't know where to find the time, but like, I can't do that. Actually, to me, that's a sign I don't want to do that. I don't want to go into the self-exploration. Journaling doesn't have to be the only way that you approach that self-exploration. I think, for sure, in my experience with coaching, the most effective way for most verbal processors is to sit with a coach and to share the stuff until you get clear on what the most important stuff is. You can use a mom, a sister, a friend, your partner. You can do all of those things. The only difference between a coach and those people is that the coach has no skin in the game and has no opinions on how you should be parenting, or why don't you love your child and want to be with them all the time, or all those things. And by the way, I've had that experience as well, where you're like, I love my kids. Also, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to have kids. Why am I feeling this way? I've been there. And so when you have a coach that's been there, done that, and has no skin in the game, then she can help you, or he can reflect back whatever that person is experiencing and then help clarify the thing. So it doesn't have to just be journaling.
No, I love that. And also, when we were talking about expectations and the expectations that we either place on ourselves or others we perceive to place on us, I feel like there's a lot of power in writing it down, because it kind of seems, depending on what it is, like slightly ridiculous. Like, for example,
Yes.
if I wrote down, I am a bad mom because I have dishes in the sink and it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. If I
Yeah.
write that down and I actually like look at it and say it out loud, and then I've heard of Byron Katie, how it's like the 4 questions,
Yes. Yes.
and one of, is it true? Can you absolutely know that it's true? Well, anytime you have that, I'm a bad mom because, or a good mom does this and a good mom does that and doesn't do that, then
Yeah.
it's when you get to that question, can you absolutely know that that's true? No, you can't, because it's completely subjective. And I feel like a
Yeah.
lot of times when I have the swirling going on in my brain, especially with the judgments, if
Yeah.
I actually were able to write it out, then I would see very clearly that it wasn't true. And then you can do some of that reframing. And I'm curious if, just with your prompts or with your journal recommendations, if you work with your moms on some reframing as far as like these I shouldn't statements.
You reminded me that that is the two-pronged answer right off the top. It wasn't just the Brené Brown TEDx talk. It was being live in a seminar with Dr. Daniel Amen. And he was speaking about those 4 questions. He didn't share that it was Byron Katie's 4 questions at the time, but so I referred to Dr. Amen introducing me these 4 questions. And I am actually rereading that book right now again. Byron Katie's do you remember what
I
her
think
first?
it's loving what matters, four
Loving what
questions.
is.
Loving what is. There you
Yeah,
go.
that's right. Powerful, powerful questions. So simple. Really hard to tap into those questions when you're in the middle of the big emotions. But at core, you have to practice them. You get into a practice. Like I tell moms to check their phones, put a mindfulness moment every day at the most triggering moments of the day, and get yourself to stop, breathe, ask yourself, how do you feel? What's going on in your body? What's going on in your brain? What are you thinking? What's the thought that you're thinking? Is it really true? Are you sure it's really true? And the answer is always, it can't always be true. And here's why I know. I've been married for 25 years, and my husband does not see the world the same way I do. So I know there's always a perspective shift that could happen. Doesn't mean I'm willing to accept the perspective shift, but it doesn't mean it's possible. And how I frame things or how I see things deeply influences what my next steps are. So if I see, say, a child with a math workbook, common conversation with homeschool moms, they don't want to do it. They're resistant to it. They are lazy, say. You could tell yourself they're lazy. Okay, if you proceed to believe they're lazy in reaction to not wanting to do something, then you're going to meet it with resistance and say, no, you have to do that. Or why aren't you doing that? Or maybe you're punishing, or consequences, or whatever. Or if you saw that child in the perspective that perhaps they are bored and they are done with 20 minutes of math after, as a 7-year-old, maybe they're done with it, or maybe you're not identifying that they have a learning challenge and it really is very difficult for them to sit and focus, then you would approach that scenario very differently. So how you think about something really matters. And so getting into the practice of this is very much like weight training. You just have to get into the practice of including those mindful moments, I think, every day, if not more than every day. And journaling can be a useful tool for that.
Yeah. And I like that, having that perspective, kind of that outsider's perspective that you would get from a coach, because I know I had a situation yesterday where I wanted to book tickets for going to Florida to see my parents. And my husband was like, oh, you're only going for 2 days, instead of, checking a bag or go. It was like you had to pay for the carry-on. So I had always like, I'm bringing a carry-on. I'm a minimalist, 2 days. I can do a carry-on. He's like, well, why don't you do a backpack? Then you wouldn't even have to pay extra for the carry-on. And I was like, no, I don't want to just pack a backpack. I'm not like, anyway. So he was like, think differently, like you're having resistance, but sometimes you don't want to hear that from your husband or your spouse. Yes. It's just like, if a coach, like if you were coaching me and you're like, Emily, I think that you just need to think differently about how you're packing, and let's talk about that. Like, oh, okay, thanks, Teresa.
I would never say
for some
words.
reason, when it's my husband, he's like, you can just fit everything in a backpack. And I'm like, no, I can't. So
he's not wrong, though. I gotta say, I have traveled a lot. We took 6 people to Europe with backpacks, and once to Eastern Africa with backpacks. So,
all right, well, maybe I could. I just was unwilling, and definitely unwilling to hear it from him. But
well, no, that's the thing. I am never direct like that in coaching unless someone's inviting me. Because at the end of the day, I've had 4 teenagers, so I know better. Yes. Being direct like that means you're inviting a pushback, and if you're being indirect, then they may or may not choose. But that's back to the discussion on would or people that are overwhelmed in their mothering role, are they able to include assessment tools like journaling or coaching or things like that? And it is yes if they want to, no if they don't.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And I think this has been really helpful, because I feel like the overwhelmed mom, sometimes, again, you're kind of just in your own head, and it's hard to be able to say, like, well, what do I need?
What's really going on?
Yeah, what's really going on? What are my actual needs? And to be able to take those first steps. So I think that we've really been able to give some guidance. And I will be linking to your workbook that you were talking about. But can you please let everyone know how else they can best connect with you if they want to learn about you, your podcast, your coaching, all the fun stuff?
Yeah. Well, you're always welcome to book a conversation with me. I waive the first coaching conversation, and then you can consider if we have a rapport. And if this sounds like something that would serve you, you can find my booking link on my website, www.capturingthecharmedlife.com. And my podcast is on Apple and Spotify. I focus primarily on the wellness of homeschool moms. So very simply, it's called Homeschool Mama Self-Care. And you'll find me all over Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, etc.
Wonderful. Well, I will provide all those links in the show notes. And thank you so much, Teresa, for coming on the show. It was so fun talking all things boundaries and self-care and all the things that help us be less overwhelmed. So thank you again for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. It was a delight.
If you like today's podcast, here's what you can do. Just take 30 seconds to leave me a review. I know you're a busy mama. You're overwhelmed, in fact. But 30 seconds of your day makes such an impact. I'll be blessed by your words. They'll definitely make my day. And who knows, you might be entered for this month's giveaway. In Apple Podcasts, scroll down to write a review. Thanks so much for your time. I'm so grateful for you.